What's up, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Goal Line Dynasty. Today, the episode we've all been waiting for. It's the post-NFL Combine 2-round rookie mock draft that Tyler and I are going to do. Of course, we are going to be doing a Superflex format, but we are going to be highlighting our top 24 rookies for a Superflex mock based on the most recent mock draft, the most recent NFL mock draft, I should say, from Tankathon, and we will be posting those results here on the video as we go so you can see where these players went in real life or quote-unquote real life. But before we get into the video, Tyler, how we doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I love the mock that we're using. It's obviously, I guess, kind of fantasy biased, I guess. A lot of these running backs got some pretty good landing spots, and a lot of it looks like eight. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the top 11 picks are going to be Superflex fantasy relevant guys. So it's going to be a fun one to mock out.
Absolutely, man. No, I'm really excited for this. I always love looking at, NFL mocks. God, there's so many mock drafts going on. NFL mocks to determine our fantasy mocks. I think it goes a long way. Obviously a lot of the landing spots are going to change, but it does give you a good indicator on what rounds and kind of the draft position that these guys could be going in. So let's jump right on into the Superflex mock here. So Tyler, it looks like you claimed spot 2, so you'll take care of our even picks. I'll take care of our odd picks. Jumping right on into it, this one doesn't need a lot of introduction, right? Caleb Williams, he's going to be my number 1 pick. Very likely going to be the number 1 pick in real life as well to the Chicago Bears. He's going to come into a really good situation. He's going to have DJ Moore. Chances are they're going to, in real life, they probably are going to draft a wide receiver at some point for him. In this mock draft, this NFL draft that we're using, they actually took Odunze at 9 overall. So Caleb Williams coming in, getting Odunze, getting DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. Say less, I'm in. Locked and loaded, pick number 1, Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and there's obviously not a whole lot to discuss. It's super flex. If you only have 1 pick, this is the one you go with. I know there's different situations if people have the 101 and the 103. And then you have a certain strength on your roster. Then obviously there's reasons to lean other ways. There's arguments for Marvin Harrison, I think, but if you only have 1 pick, and especially in a super flex draft, then obviously only in a super flex draft, you're going, Caleb Williams, and kind of made my pick for me. I went number 2 this time because I went number 1 last time, so I figured I'd do myself a double favor, I guess, and give myself an easy pick at the 1-2. Marvin Harrison obviously is a generational wide receiver prospect, and I think he's a guy that he pretty much allows you to trade up and down the board this year with wide receivers. So the same way that Bijan Robinson did last year, when Bijan was drafted, you could trade him straight up for any running back you wanted. It's pretty damn close that you can trade Marvin Harrison for almost any wide receiver you want if you're willing to tack on a very small piece. There's not a lot of people aren't asking for a whole ton on top of Marvin Harrison to go get Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. Those deals are happening, and people are valuing him up there in that range. So whether I'm viewing him as a trade piece right now or whatever, I'm taking Marvin Harrison, and I'm gonna just love rostering him or seeing whatever deals come my way when people see his name get drafted here.
Yeah, everyone seems to be excited about Marvin Harrison, and what wouldn't you have to be excited about, right? And when you look at, Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels, they are really good quarterback prospects, but they're far from perfect. They're far from the quarterback prospects, in my opinion, that Caleb Williams is. And Marvin Harrison seems to be, outside of Caleb Williams, the closest thing to a sure thing in this draft class, right? So I agree with you there. If I had pick 2, I would be taking Marvin Harrison. But I don't. I have pick 3. This is going to make you happy because you're going to get your guy at number 4. I already have a feeling I know who that is. But I'm actually going to take Drake Maye here. Going number 2 overall in this mock to Washington, I think is going to, actually happen in real life as well. Obviously, we didn't get to see Jayden Daniels do anything at the Combine. We didn't really see Drake Maye do anything at the Combine either. But it is what it is. Drake Maye, over the last year or so, right, he's been a more highly touted prospect than Jayden Daniels. Obviously, Jayden Daniels comes out, has a phenomenal 2023, right? But I still believe in Drake Maye. I think he is a bit more on the safer side than Jayden Daniels, and I don't think Drake Maye gets enough credit for what he can do with his legs, which is obviously going to be a pretty good thing for his fantasy production. I also lean him over Jayden Daniels in this situation because he comes in and he has Terry McLaurin, he has Jahan Dotson, he has Brian Thomas. I mean, Brian Robinson. I don't know where I got Brian Thomas from. Brian Robinson, a good enough run game, right? The team is rebuilding on defense, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for Drake Maye's production, right? They're going to be playing a lot of catch up. Drake Maye is going to be thrust into a lot of interesting scenarios as a rookie. So I think it's like a 2A, 2B with him and Jayden Daniels, and I'm probably going to lean whoever does go to Washington because they're going to be put in a better immediate situation. So I'm taking Drake Maye here at number 3.
Yeah, I think he does. Like, obviously, he has a better immediate situation with better rushing or with better weapons around him. But I mean, Jayden Daniels for me is his rushing floor makes him safe, regardless of where he goes. You know, I mean, people are viewing him as like I heard him called the next Lamar Jackson in a in a tweet earlier today. Where that's true or not, yet to be seen. I think he's viewed as a little bit better of a throw of a football than Lamar was coming out. But I mean, in a Superflex draft, I mean, either of those guys really are on the board at 102. You can't blame anybody for taking them. It's a quarterback dominant game here. But so for that reason, especially since I think Nabers could be in consideration here at the 104, but he went to the Giants. I don't love that spot, so it kind of cements. Yeah, I'm gonna go take Jayden Daniels at the 104. I think, like I just said, his rushing upside is incredible. He was rushing the ball like 10 plus times a game at LSU. He was able to, sustain 2 top wide receivers and let them have 2 very good seasons and lead them to have, first round draft capital. So I think I'm going to take Jayden Daniels. I think he performed a lot better in like big games against ranked opponents than Drake Maye did. So I'm going to, just ride with, I think what I saw with him against the best competition. And I think he's kind of got the safest fantasy production, option at this point at the 104.
Later on in this draft, it looks like New England does go out and they do get A.D. Mitchell in the second round for New England. That's honestly a big deal. I'm pretty high on A.D. Mitchell. I'm a lot higher than a lot of other people seem to be. So I think he can step in and be an immediate wide receiver 1. The Patriots do have a lot of cap room to play with. Obviously, the emergence of Demario Douglas last year kind of as a complementary receiver for Jayden Daniels, I think is going to go a long way. A lot of changes going on in New England, but it starts with, not just the coaching, but it also starts with the quarterback here in Jayden Daniels. And I don't disagree. I think that in just about any way you shake it up, this should be, you can change Maye and Daniels depending on what your preference is there, but this should be the majority top 4 in Superflex formats. And I think regardless of the landing spot, I think Malik Nabers still needs to be number 5. Honestly, if he goes to the Giants, I will be tempted to explore other options here at pick 5. But the fact of the matter is Malik Nabers, if he was in any other class, right? If he wasn't sharing a class with Marvin Harrison Jr., you'd have to go back to when Jamar Chase entered to find, in my opinion, a better wide receiver prospect than Malik Nabers. So no matter where he goes, obviously the Giants, not an ideal situation. It is going to take a little bit, but Daniel Jones, he was hurt last year. He could have a bounce back. You never know. We don't want to necessarily rule him out. I mean, if the Giants can get Darius Slayton back-to-back 800-yard seasons, why can't we expect at least 800 from Malik Nabers as a rookie, right? I don't think that's an asinine thing to ask for. The only thing about Nabers, I think he could make a little bit of improvement on, just route running in general, be a little bit more slick. But at the end of the day, he does everything right. And he's not a bad route runner by any stretch of the imaginations, right? It's not like his number one go-to attribute is his route running, but he does everything good. Actually, he does everything really good. Jump ball specialist, short game, good with yak yards, right? So I'll be hard pressed, even if he does go to the Giants in real life, to pick anyone else besides Malik Nabers at 105.
Yeah, I mean, I think just based on the draft capital alone, like you can't argue with it. A guy who's that highly respected by NFL GMs, you have to go up and grab it. It's such a deep class to be able to get these kind of profiles at the 1-4, 1-5. So it's beautiful. And here, a lot of people are going to say go Brock Bowers at the 1-6. Even with the Chargers, I'm not going to do it. There's two guys here that I would rather have over him. I mean, I think the tight end market is just so saturated that like in a deep class like this, I don't want to invest this pick this early on a guy like Brock Bowers when I can go buy someone so much cheaper. I can buy a Jake Ferguson, a David Njoku, anybody else. Literally anybody else that's just cheaper than the 106. I could spend the 110 on whoever. So I'm going to spend this capital on a receiver because I think you look, later on, even now, like with T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle, their careers haven't really panned out. Like their names get you in the conversation for the Sam Laportas and the Trey McBrides and the Mark Andrews and whoever else you want right now. So I'm gonna take Rome Odunze. He's the one who he's paired up here with Caleb Williams being drafted at 9 overall. If that's true, I think that's going to be a good spot. Even though he's behind DJ Moore, I think it's there's going to be plenty of volume to go around there. I don't think they're going to really hold Caleb back. I think the ball is going to be in his hands most plays. So give me Rome Odunze with that kind of draft capital. He had a pretty good combine, and then actually, you saw the story about how he stayed after to, rerun his 3-cone drill however many times until he met that threshold that he was happy with. But I like Roma Odunze kind of. It scares me to draft him because he reminds me of Treylon Burks and Quentin Johnston and all the guys who have disappointed us. But I'm not going to be the one I'm not just going to not draft him. I'm not going to be scared to take him and whiff on it the 1 year that it hits. So I'll take Roma Odunze.
Yeah, and I like the argument against Brock Bowers there. I mean, going to the Chargers, there's arguably not a better spot for Brock Bowers to end up in. But, I mean, you taking him here, you're banking on him being Sam Laporta. You're banking on him being Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, right? And that's just not something that I'm willing to do, even at the 107 here with how this draft has shaken up. Odunze, to me, I have a lot of faith in Odunze. I can see a world where he's kind of this year's Quentin Johnston, kind of a boomer bust kind of guy. But like you alluded to, Odunze, I think has a lot going for him. And the fact that he's, some people can call it corny. I call it pretty cool. I like that he stayed after and he kept running and running and running at the combine until he got the results that he wanted, because it really shows the kind of guy that he is. It shows that he's not going to go out there and be lazy. I think NFL teams are going to really like that. And I do think he is going to be locked into, at the very least, like a top 12 pick in real life here. But moving on from pick 106, like I said, I'm too nervous to take Brock Bowers here. Actually, scratch that. I'm not nervous to take him here, but I would rather explore other options to get someone else, because JJ McCarthy, I'm not high on JJ McCarthy in the slightest bit. I think that he's going to be an average at best quarterback, but a lot of people could say the same thing about Kirk Cousins, right? A lot of people say Kirk Cousins is just an average guy, but Kirk Cousins can get the job done. He throws for a lot of yards, and I don't know if anybody realizes this, but JJ McCarthy, not only does he go to Minnesota in this mock draft, but his current odds are to go to Minnesota. And you're telling me that if you have a guy that goes in the top 15 picks to be on an offense with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, you're going to take a tight end over him. You're going to take several wide receivers before him. Probably not. I fully agree. Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, and Rome Odunze do need to go before JJ McCarthy in this situation. But this is the perfect situation for JJ McCarthy. Whether or not I like him as a prospect doesn't matter. You have a top 12 drafted quarterback here in the perfect landing spot, day one starter. I think you have to take him if he ends up here at pick 107.
Yeah, and I mean, like, at what point would you really call JJ McCarthy, like, if this is what happens in real life, at what point would you call him a bust, drafting him at the 107? If he doesn't even come out and start for a year, comes out the next year and finishes as a QB 16, 15, and then all of a sudden he's putting up, top 12 seasons maybe. Like, that's what you're drafting him to be at the 107. I was actually considering him there at the 106. Like, I feel like, even like the upside, like he could be good. He could be really good. We don't know. Like Patrick Mahomes wasn't drafted in the top 5. Josh Allen wasn't drafted in the top 5. So like these guys, like you don't know who's going to be all that great. JJ McCarthy might just be the next guy, and he's going to be in obviously a great situation if this pans out. So can't blame you there. And now I'm kind of stuck because I feel like now I really do have to take Brock Bowers. I mean, Brian Thomas goes to a crowded receiver room in Green Bay. Keon Coleman in Baltimore, I don't like that. Troy Franklin, goodness gracious, in Kansas City could have been an option. But with Bowers' draft capital, I'm assuming that we're playing in a 0.5 tight end premium. I don't really think I have to say much about drafting him at the 108. I think most people are going to think that he fell here. But yeah, I'm going to take my shot on him. And he's obviously, there's not much to say. Him going to the Chargers at 5 overall, like he's a stud, and we know he's a stud. And fun fact, I found him in a Madden Ultimate Team Pack the other day, and he's actually a higher rated wide receiver than tight end. So, so I'll enjoy that at the 108. I'll like that price because I think that's probably what I have to pay right now for Trey McBride, all those guys or whatever. I probably have to pay a little bit more than that to get my hands on them. So I'll take him.
Yeah, I think it's finally fair to say Bowers does deserve to go here at 108. There's definitely a world where I make an argument for Brian Thomas over Brock Bowers, but not with these landing spots. I wouldn't be able to justify taking Bowers with Justin Herbert versus Thomas in that crowded receiver room like you alluded to. Not that Jordan Love's a bad quarterback. I think you and I have both really kind of come around to Jordan Love. Not a bad quarterback situation, but a really insanely crowded receiver room. And honestly, I'm kind of scratching my head as to why Green Bay would do that. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me for the purpose of this mock, but it is what it is. So with that being said, Brian Thomas is not going to be my pick at 109, despite him being my wide receiver 4 of this class currently. I just really, really am not a fan of that situation. Now, Keon Coleman, I seem to be higher on than a lot of people, but going to Baltimore, despite it being, a late first round pick, I don't necessarily love it. I think Zay Flowers is really good. I think Mark Andrews is really good. I think Lamar Jackson has a very limited ceiling in terms of passing production. And I don't necessarily know if he can support Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman can kind of be relegated to just that big bruising kind of receiver that they need in situations. Not that they wouldn't really use a first round receiver, but it just, there's something about it that just does not do it for me here. Troy Franklin, I'm not opposed to taking him going to Kansas City. There's a lot to like there, but I'm actually going to come from the top ropes here and do something that a lot of people don't really expect. And I'm actually going to take Trey Benson, going to Baltimore as the second running back drafted in the second round. Now, Jonathan Brooks, he goes to Green Bay and does go slightly ahead of Trey Benson. That's not a bad situation, but Jonathan Brooks is coming off of an ACL tear, right? We could see a very limited production from him in the first year. It takes, unless you're an absolute freak athlete, which none of the running backs in this class are, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of them tested well. Athleticism versus being a freak football player, I should say, are two completely different things. But anyway, Jonathan Brooks coming off that ACL tear, slightly less of a good situation in Green Bay, I think. But Trey Benson comes into Baltimore. He's my RB1 of this class currently. I love the situation. I mean, dude, if Gus Edwards can go out there and run rampant, why can't Trey Benson, right? He's shifty. He's got a good size. He's a good enough, pass catcher, actually runs a pretty good route out of the backfield. The one thing about him that I notice is he does dance around a bit too much, which, he could get himself into some trouble. And the other thing, which I didn't find in my scouting for him, but I did find at the NFL Combine, I watched some of his drills, he just runs completely upright. I didn't see that on film, but he was definitely doing that at the Combine, which I hope he doesn't do that so much in real life. But either way, I think this is one of those rare situations where I'm going to take a running back in the first round of a Superflex this year, which I think is not going to be very popular, but this is a good situation. It is good draft capital, and he is my RB1 prior to the NFL draft, so I'll take him here.
I mean, dude, anyone who steps foot in that Baltimore backfield has been able to be fantasy relevant. So, like, if you're getting second round draft capital, that's them saying, like, yeah, you're going to be the next guy in, you know. Gus Edwards is able to be good. Keaton Mitchell was able to be good. J.K. Dobbins was able to be good for the 48 seconds of game time that he was healthy. All of that stuff. So I like Trey Benson's landing spot. And, he was obviously going to be my first running back off the board. He was definitely, like, in consideration. But here I'm going to be willing to take that shot on Brian Thomas. I mean, he had just an absolute monster year. I mean, it is a good offense in Green Bay. But he just 17 touchdowns is crazy. You know, it's hard to do that unless you're a really good football player. He did it with a premier program. With a really good quarterback, and I think that Jordan Love, that's where a lot of his receivers got a lot of points this year. Jaden Reed put up 10 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs, all his points came with all of his touchdowns. Christian Watson, his points came with touchdowns. Anybody that you name in that offense was coming with, all of their points were based off of touchdown production. So I'm going to take Brian Thomas there. I love what you see on film. A lot of what in Jayden Daniels highlights, like the wow plays, are Brian Thomas, actually, not even really Malik Nabers as much. So I'm going to feel confident. He gets first-round draft capital. I'm not going to let a first-round wide receiver fall out of the first round. We've learned our lesson too many times on that. So I'm going to take him here and feel good about it. At the 110, you're getting a guy that has a name that people really like. So, how deep is this class? I like this class a lot. In comparison to last year as well. I think it lines up perfectly with it.
Yeah, the class is insanely deep, kind of like you were saying. There's a lot of names on here. This class is going to take you deep into the second round, I think, in terms of, guys that people are getting excited over months before the NFL draft. Brian Thomas, he's my wide receiver 4, despite the landing spot. No complaints from me. He was going to be in contention here at 111, and I might have taken him here at 111, depending on what you did at 110. The one thing about Brian Thomas, man, dude, he's so fast for his size. 6'3", 210. Ran a 4.33 at the combine. I try not to put a lot of stock into 40-yard dash times because it really doesn't tell a good enough story, right? If you look at Keon Coleman, he had one of the worst 40-yard dash times of this class, and even he ran a 4.61. It's not that that's absolutely abysmal, right? Obviously, you want to be under 4.6, but 4.61 for his size, not the end of the world. But when you watch the gauntlet drill that he did, Keon Coleman was actually the fastest guy out there at game speed, right? So I kind of take the 40-yard dashes with a grain of salt, but Brian Thomas moved entirely too fast not to, turn my head given his size. But here at pick 11, I'm definitely going wide receiver. There's a lot to like on the board, right? Troy Franklin to Kansas City. Like I just said, I do like Keon Coleman. Don't love the situation in Baltimore, but I do like him more than Troy Franklin. I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to make my claim in AD Mitchell here. Early round 2, and he gets to go and potentially be Jayden Daniels' immediate wide receiver 1. He is a big physical guy, right? Very fast for his size as well. I think he also ran in the 4.3s, patient ball tracker, nice quick feet, decent yak. He's good, right? I like him a lot. I know a lot of people are probably going to put in the comments I'm taking I'm taking the wrong receiver here from Texas, right? But it is what it is. I like him. I like him a lot, and he's going to be an immediate wide receiver 1 because there's no competition in New England.
Yeah, and he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for Jayden Daniels in this draft too. So Adonai Mitchell had an insane relative athletic score. He was off the charts. Had a great. It tested really, really well. Obviously, nobody really loves to hear, "Oh, I'm taking a fantasy asset from the Patriots," but this is going to be a new team, so we really don't know what things are going to look like there. So I'll definitely take my shot on a really good athlete there at the back end of the first round, and not really have much to say about it. So here I'll take Troy Franklin. Guy who's obviously very talented in Kansas City. He's going to be behind Rashee Rice, but I think Travis Kelce is, seeing his way out the door sometime soon. He kind of has to, right? And there's going to be targets to go around in that offense and nothing but opportunity. And that's really what we're looking for out of our fantasy assets. So at this point, I think when it comes down to these last 2 receivers that we're looking at between Troy Franklin and Keon Coleman, and maybe there's some people, Lad McConkey at Tennessee, I think I'm just going to take the guy with the more productive fantasy throwing the football quarterback, Troy Franklin in Kansas City over Keon Coleman, especially since Keon Coleman didn't really, test as well as people thought he was going to. All we really heard was he was going to test really well, and then he didn't. So I don't really know what to make of Keon Coleman right now, but it looks like he's still getting first round draft capital. into an open spot. But I'd still just like Troy Franklin's a lot better. And this is the point of the draft where you can just say, like, I like this guy's landing spot better. So that's where I'm going to invest.
Yeah, I like going Troy Franklin there. I mean, Kansas City has been missing a consistent deep ball threat, right? Sure, they've had MVS, they've had Mecole Hardman, they've had whoever else, right? There's a lot of drops going on in that offense. So if Troy Franklin can step in and even offer just slightly better, reliability for Pat Mahomes on those deep balls, I think that's going to go a long way. Um, I am going to take Keon Coleman here. I know we've talked a lot of trash on that landing spot, but it is what it is. He is in Superflex formats. He's my number 10 ranked prospect overall coming in. I love the talent, don't love the landing spot. Obviously, the NFL Combine's not doing him any favors, but I do have faith that he can be a late first-round pick in real life, just like this to Baltimore, or potentially an early round 2. I sincerely hope if at pick 33 and the Panthers are on the clock, so I'm a Panthers fan, I do sincerely hope they would not pass him up because I think he can go out and be a true wide receiver 1 for a very lucky offense out there. He is a bit more raw than, guys at the top half of this list. I would say Marvin Harrison, Nabers, Odunze, Thomas. I would even argue, AD Mitchell, probably more pro ready than Keon Coleman, but he'll get there. I like him a lot as a prospect. I think he'll be fine as an NFL player. So I'm not going to let him fall farther than the first pick of the second round.
Yeah, and it's hard to let him fall further than that, right? I mean, he's a receiver with first round draft, but like we said, we don't let those guys fall. And here, I am close to starting to hammer those running backs, but when I look at the landing spots for the guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix, like if Bo Nix goes to Atlanta 43 overall, and like that's where they're going to invest, I'm gonna take Bo Nix here. Like I like that landing spot for him. The upside, like of getting a guy who's drafted in the second round, like the upside there, it's unbelievable. If you can hit on a quarterback there, you'd be able to trade him for just about like 90% of the running backs in the league. So I'm gonna take my shot on Bo Nix just being serviceable, and maybe putting up a top 12 season or top 15 season or top 20 season and getting people excited, for him and have some kind of hope. And now all of a sudden he's got some value. Kind of like Will Levis this year. Will Levis is serviceable and can get you a lot of names and a lot of like trading him for running back depth isn't very difficult these days. So I'm going to take my shot on him, even though I think that those guys got some good landing spots. I think Bo Nix is better, and I'm going to take my shot there.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that Atlanta is actually going to take Bo Nix. Obviously, we're going off of this mock draft. If he goes this early to Atlanta, then yeah, I'm all on board. I would strongly consider him here at 202 as well. Just in terms of what Atlanta's doing, though, I mean, new coach, it makes sense for them to go for a new quarterback, right? But I mean, this ownership has lived and failed their late round quarterbacks recently, right? Obviously, Desmond Ridder, I think he was a third round pick and definitely not nearly as good of a prospect as Bo Nix, but I'm not saying that meaning that Bo Nix is a really good prospect. I'm just kind of talking down on Desmond Ridder there. Yeah, if he goes to this situation, he gets Drake London, he gets, Bijan Robinson. Obviously, there's some moving pieces that Atlanta can definitely improve on here. Kyle Pitts, completely forgot about him there, right? So yeah, nothing wrong with that. He's going to be a boomer bust quarterback. Could be really good, could be really bad. But at the 202, it seems like it's a good time to go for those boomer bust players, because if you miss it, you're like, whatever, I found on my second round pick. If you hit, you're like, look at me, guys, I landed really good on my second round pick, right? So nothing wrong with that. Not going to fight you on that one. One thing that's weird to me here at the 203, so Xavier Worthy is going to be, for a lot of people, he's going to push up to being a late first round pick. Now, if he goes to the perfect landing spot, I'll consider it. But a lot of people, I think, are putting too much stock into his, record-breaking 40-yard dash at the combine. Now, yes, 4.21, obviously the most impressive 40-yard dash of all time at the NFL Combine. But he's not necessarily an amazing football player, in my opinion, right? He's kind of on the smaller side. He kind of reminds me a lot of Tank Dell. And if you guys are fans of this channel, if this is not your first video with us, you'll know that I'm not personally a massive fan of Tank Dell. There's nothing wrong with him. He's a good football player, but just more of a gadget than anything. So I don't know. I just worry about his longevity. That's my tangent. So I'm not going to take Xavier Worthy here. Jalen Polk to Cleveland is interesting. I actually do really like Jalen Polk. Lad McConkey, I'm lower on than most people are. I don't necessarily love him. He's a good route runner, a really good route runner, but that's kind of all he has going for me, or for him, I should say, to be honest with you. I think this one is going to be a little shocking, what I'm about to do. I am going to take a running back, but I'm not going to take Jonathan Brooks, who went second round to Green Bay. I'm going to take Blake Corum, who went round 3 to Arizona. He is one of the better pass catching running backs of this class. His last 2 years in college, massive production for what he is. I was a big fan of Blake Corum last year, and I was really hoping that he was going to come out so I could draft him in last year's draft. Obviously, that didn't happen. The downsides with him, he's not. He's not like that home run hitting running back. Like, we're not going to get our Devon 8-chain plays out of him very often, if at all. He also is a little impatient at the line, in my opinion, but nothing that can't be fixed. I think going to Arizona is honestly a phenomenal spot. James Conner is by no means a bad running back, but he's definitely getting older, and this backfield will cede to Blake Corum sooner rather than later. So I love this landing spot. Maybe not so much immediately because James Conner is still there, but I think this time next year, Blake Corum is potentially a workhorse in this offense, and he is a good pass catcher, so I think it's going to go a long way. So might be a hot take taking him over Jonathan Brooks, who there is a round discrepancy, but I'm willing to do that here.
I don't think it's all that crazy, and I think this would be, Arizona basically saying like, yeah, this is gonna be the successor of James Conner. And I also think I'm gonna go with a different running back over Jonathan Brooks here too. I'm gonna go with Braelon Allem to the Dallas Cowboys. Pick 87. It's not, out of this world draft capital, but this kid's young. He's been a beast since he was young. People have been making a joke since he was 17 years old at Wisconsin, and he was just running people over. People are all excited thinking that Derrick Henry might go to Dallas. Well, Braelon Allem going to Dallas would be the next best thing behind Derrick Henry. People are saying he could be the next one. He is that next big body, just bruiser, guy who could see 30 carries a game or something, like it's not literally a game, like throughout an entire season, but in a couple of games where you're just like, wow, he is a workhorse, and they're just going to feed him the load. So I like Braelon Allem in Dallas. I like, obviously, any running back that's going to, play for Dallas. Even Tony Pollard on like a down year finishes like the RB 15 or something along those lines. I don't have it in front of me, so don't shit on me if that's like way off. But I like, obviously, I'm gonna take that shot in the early second. This is why we get those picks, and like this could be the reset button for like another year or two for the Cowboys. So I'll take a shot.
Yeah. Dallas always produces a good running back. The thing about Braelon Allem is I don't foresee him really ever becoming a reliable pass catcher. So his ability to stay on the field for third downs is definitely going to be in question, at least for the early stages of his career. But even if you give me the running back on Dallas that plays nearly every first and second down, I'm going to be happy to take that in the middle of a second round here, right? So does deserve to go here. And I personally would take Jonathan Brooks over Braelon Allem myself. Obviously, the year one production could struggle in Green Bay, potentially sharing a field with Aaron Jones coming off that ACL tear. But I'm going to do what you did with Bo Nix, and I'm going to take a swing on Michael Penix here. Penix goes to Vegas. It's a second round pick. Chances are, at the very least, he's going to be able to compete for that starting role, and all he's competing with is Aiden O'Connell, right? So chances are Michael Penix is going to step on the field week one and get to throw the ball to Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. I do think they're going to re-sign Josh Jacobs, right? This is going to be a good offense that he can be put in. I don't necessarily love him as a prospect, really at all, if I'm being entirely honest with you. And I don't know if it's the fact that I believe he's a lefty, and when you watch him, his throwing motion, man, it just does not look right. Like, there's nothing wrong with him as a quarterback, but there's just something about watching him play that I just can't do. So I won't be watching many Raiders games here, but I will take Penix here as a mid-second round flyer because, again, if I fan, whatever, it's pick 205. If I hit, and even if he can be, a mid to low end QB2 for my fantasy team for the next 3 to 5 years, I'll take that at this point, right? I think that's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. So I'll take him here 205.
Yeah, beautiful price. I mean, I think like his situation isn't bad either. They have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and who was that tight end that everybody loved last year, Michael Mayer, right? He was I think he can still be good. Coming out of Notre Dame. I love that kid. So here, this is kind of where the names start to get, pretty ugly, but I'm gonna take a guy who I think just has some name value and might be able to help me, be a trade asset. Like this is what I would do if I was on the board. I would take Lad McConkey. I think he's got a fun name, a name that you can maybe change your fantasy team's name around in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of people like Lad. I don't really see it with him. Like I know, like you were saying before, you're not really too high on him. Going to Tennessee isn't a terrible landing spot, but he is going to be behind DeAndre Hopkins and have Will Levis throwing the ball. So we really don't know what that situation is going to look like. But he comes from a premier program, out of Georgia. So I'll take Lad McConkey. He must have been a pretty good football player to get to go play at Georgia and be a leading receiver there. So I'll take him in the mid-second.
Yeah, and he could be a pretty reliable option for Will Levis, right? I don't necessarily think he's going to develop ever into a wide receiver 1 for Dynasty. Maybe he can flirt with low end wide receiver 2 numbers if he gets the volume. Obviously DeAndre Hopkins getting up there in age. Treylon Burks doesn't have much going for him. Kyle Phillips, Chiga Conquo. Like there's a lot of room for production and growth in this Tennessee offense. So it's not necessarily a bad landing spot for a prospect, in my opinion, that does need to develop a little bit to be a true NFLer. So nothing wrong there. I was honestly, when you were talking about name value, I thought you were going to go with Xavier Worthy just because of his 40-yard dash time, who admittedly is in contention here, but the skid is going to stop. I am going to take Jonathan Brooks. He's kind of like the 1B in this class to me with Trey Benson, and Trey Benson went almost a full round ahead of him. Obviously, landing spots are a big thing with running backs. Landing spots are a very big thing with running backs. I don't want to pretend like it's not. And obviously, coming off of that ACL injury, it's not necessarily ideal either. But he is good. He's fast. He's got great acceleration. He's elusive. He's got good hands. Really, the big knock on Jonathan Brooks is just he's hurt, right? He's hurt, and he's going to go share the backfield with Aaron Jones, who probably isn't going to be there much longer, right? So Jonathan Brooks, if I'm taking him, I'm taking him in anticipation for my 2025 season, and that lines up perfectly with when he would take over that backfield in Green Bay anyway. So Brooks skid will stop at 206.
Yeah, and I definitely like that price for him because someone's gonna have to give you like an early second for you to really want to move off of him at any point during the season, or maybe mid to late first. So even if like you can be patient with this guy, because you're gonna have to be, especially like at this price tag. I don't mind drafting a guy that I'm gonna have to be patient as far as getting my value back. This is where it gets really gross. Like you said, Xavier Worthy ran that huge, that massive 40-yard dash time, but I saw a tweet the other day about just how bad these record-setting NFL 40-yard dash time receivers and running backs as well have been. And even though I don't want any part of them on my roster, this is where I might just draft for trade value and say, hey, I'll take Xavier Worthy. He's in an elite offense. He's with Philadelphia. They gave him decent draft capital. He's fast as all hell, and AJ Brown has drama. So who wants to take a shot on Xavier Worthy? Can I use Xavier Worthy for anything? But this is just what I would do if I owned the 208, and this was the board I was looking at. So
Yeah.
I have to be honest.
No. And I think that lines up pretty well with my thoughts as well. And again, Philadelphia, why? Why? Now Xavier Worthy, wherever he goes, he's probably going to be, the slot guy. Obviously, he'll be a deep threat with that speed, but I can see him, especially with his frame, being more of a slot guy. I guess it makes sense putting him in an offense with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, but I don't necessarily see it. If he goes to a different landing spot, I can definitely see him going before 208 for me personally. But it is what it is. I'm not going to kind of beat the dead horse there. Moving on, pick 209. Now, I am tempted to take Ja'Tavion Sanders, the tight end. He went to Cincinnati in the second round. Joe Burrow has been missing a good tight end since he's become an NFL quarterback. And if the Bengals are going to finally invest in early draft round capital to a tight end that does catch the ball really well, is a decent route runner, can block, it's definitely intriguing. But I think you could probably get him a little bit later than this. So I'm not going to pull the trigger just yet. Roman Wilson is a guy that is pretty interesting to Buffalo in round 2. I think he is pretty good. I think he can be really good. But I might just be taking him more or less for his quarterback play because he does get to play with Josh Allen. You know what? Yeah, I am going to take Roman Wilson because he gets to go and play with Josh Allen. And where are you? Wow, he is down here. Did I miss him? Roman Wilson.
No, he's right there, 589. He was number 589.
There he is. Okay. Yeah, and Roman Wilson for me. So I do have a like a rookie predictor model, I guess you can call it. I don't really know what the rookie predictive model. And Roman Wilson does actually appear to be pretty good for me. As long as he gets round 2 draft capital like this, he only ranks up to a C, which doesn't sound amazing, but in terms of the modeler, it's not bad. Some of the guys that are still on the board that I do have him higher on the modeler, you got Jalen Polk, you got Malachi Corley, and that's it. Those are the only 2 guys that haven't been. Oh, and Devontae Walker. But if he gets third round draft capital, he is definitely going to drop down a little bit here. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's nothing wrong with him. He gets to go play with Josh Allen. He is going to fill a hole that Gabe Davis is going to leave behind. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is in turmoil in Buffalo, right? Even if he's there in 2024, is he really going to be there in 2024? I don't know. So I'm just going to take the guy who has a good landing spot, who has an average draft grade for me, in hopes that he can be, maybe a wide receiver 3 for my roster at some point.
Yeah, and that's obviously a wide open room, behind Stephon Diggs. Even Stephon Diggs stinks, They have Khalil Shakir, who they like, but I think that I don't think anybody would say he's like elite and he's unpassable. So yeah, I like taking a shot on Roman Wilson in an elite offense, and that's what you want, guys with opportunities in elite offenses. Like, those are the guys who are going to be able to be serviceable in the later rounds of these rookie drafts. So I'm going to take another running back here. I'm going to take Bucky Irving. I'm going to take my shot on him. I think obviously any running back who plays for the Browns, whether it's Jim Ford, Jerome Ford, Jim Brown, or Bucky Irving, Nick Chubb, whoever it is, and I'll just take a shot that is Bucky Irving at some point for some stretch of games, this upcoming next couple of years, and that's what I'm going to pay my price for.
Yeah, and Bucky Irving, to me, if he does get day 2 capital, especially with Cleveland, I think it is going to go a long way. Because currently in the modeler that I have going, I actually have him projected to be round 4 draft pick. And he's currently the RB4 of this class in the modeler, only behind Brooks Benson and Corum. If he does actually get round 3 capital, he's still going to be, the 4th RB here, but just barely. Like the modeler that I have, you have your generationals, you have your top 5s, you have RB1s or RB2s, and Bucky Irving is one of only 4 guys in this class that does project to return, RB2 value for me in terms of fantasy. So Cleveland, day 2 draft capital, I think it makes a lot of sense. I really like that pick here, and he was going to be someone I was going to look at the 111. So no complaints from me. My last pick here, a lot of pressure because honestly, it's between the 3 guys right here: Ja'Tavion Sanders, Devontae Walker, and Malachi Corley. Corley is, where are you on my list, sir? Yeah, Corley is my number 17 ranked overall prospect in Superflex. Devontae Walker is my number 15. The issue here for Devontae Walker is he's going to go and share with Nico Collins. He's going to share with Tank Dell. Um, it, I don't see a world where Devontae Walker is going to become a premier pass catcher in Houston, because I don't see him really stealing a ton of targets away from Nico Collins and Tank Dell, at least in the short term. So I am going to take Malachi Corley here. Definitely a piece of the Carolina offense that is missing big time. Now, he is not a true wide receiver one, but he has been called the Yak King for a reason, right? He's not particularly an amazing route runner. He's not particularly, a super aggressive wide receiver or anything like that, but he's the guy that in Bryce Young's situation is arguably the perfect one for him. Obviously, I would love them to go trade up and get Malik Nabers or something like that, which is never going to happen in a million years. But Corley is the guy that you want to get your quarterback when your quarterback has no time to throw the ball, right? Quick releases, line of scrimmage. He is a big play waiting to happen if he catches the ball within that first yard or two from scrimmage. So I think it's going to be a really good fit. I don't necessarily want to call him the wide receiver one of this offense, but he is going to produce and do it at a pretty consistent basis, because there's going to be a lot of play calls specifically for him weekly in the game plan. So I think to Carolina, Malachi Corley, he definitely should be a second round pick.
I mean, I think any wide receiver who walks into Carolina's, practice facility with two functioning legs and is awake and not on drugs has the potential to be the wide receiver one in that room.
That's fair.
And you have to be under 31 years old. Be under 31 years old too, because Adam Thielen isn't a shitbag. I like Adam Thielen. He's a good guy. I'm not going to down talk him. But here with my last pick in the draft, I'm just going to chase what I think is, another guy with some opportunity and a really good offense. I'm going to take Xavier Leggette, going to Dallas at 56 overall. That's really good draft capital. And if I've learned one thing about this draft, it's that I don't care about name value at all. All I care about is the profile. What position do you play? How early were you drafted? What kind of, if there's a tiebreaker, it's what kind of program did you come from? Or or what type of football player are you? Are you the type that I like? Are you a possession receiver? Are you a slot guy? Are you a running back with receiving upside? I mean, running backs are a little bit more predictable, obviously, right? But when it comes to these receivers and quarterbacks, it's just give me the profile, and this is where I want to invest my draft capital. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm gonna let the board just fall to me and let the board speak for itself.
Yeah, him going round 2 is a pretty big deal, honestly. I can see him slipping to round 3 in real life, but if he goes and gets to be, the wide receiver 2 behind CeeDee Lamb and get to play with Dak Prescott, I think that's a no-brainer, right? I would say he's kind of a toss-up with both Jalen Polk and Devontae Walker for me at this point in the draft. Jalen Polk, what's going on in Cleveland with their quarterback situation? Obviously, they have Deshaun Watson, but we don't know. Jalen Polk is a good complementary receiver to Amari Cooper. Xavier Leggette is going to be a good complementary receiver to CeeDee Lamb, just like Devontae Walker could be a good complementary receiver to both Nico Collins and Tank Dell. So kind of a coin toss there for me. Honestly, if I was picking 112, I would not have wanted to make that decision, and I would have just taken Jatavion Sanders, because I think ending up in the Bengals is a pretty good move there. But it is what it is. So obviously, some surprises here. Definitely some guys went at all within these first 2 rounds that I wouldn't have expected to go in a super flex mock, but based on these landing spots, they make a ton of sense. My biggest surprise is that I didn't take Devontae Walker a lot sooner than I did. But again, I really don't like, I really don't like him having to share the field with that many mouths in Houston, despite having a really good situation with CJ Stroud. But Tyler, looking at this board, anything jumping off the page to you, big and surprising? I mean, to me, the biggest surprise is JJ McCarthy going at 107, but going to Minnesota, I think makes a ton of sense when you see it here. But outside from that, is there anything here that's just kind of mind blowing based on where we're at in this offseason?
Yeah, I don't think that that'll be like mind blowing if that's what actually happens. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people who are saying JJ McCarthy is like a lock to be a top 10 pick. So, I mean, who really knows what's going to happen? But going to Minnesota is a great offense, and if that's the case, I think he's going to be in consideration at the 1-6. But I think the thing that really just stands out the most to me is just how huge the drop off is after Bowers. Like, if you don't have I feel like the 108 is the last pick that people like really feel great about. You know, if this is how things shake up on draft day, it could be worse. I mean, we were looking last year, we were thinking JSN and Quentin Johnson were both going to be top 10 picks. Didn't happen. We thought Jordan Addison was going to follow shortly behind after. And like out of all those guys, like Puka Nacua ended up being the best receiver in that draft class. So we obviously have no idea what might happen. We expect Marvin Harrison to be pretty locked in up there at the top. These quarterbacks to go high, but we might not be looking at 3 great receivers in the top 10. We might be looking at an average wide receiver class later on. We don't really know what's going to happen, but it seems like right now the 108 is just such a big tier drop that if I can't get into, if I haven't tried to get into that tier yet, if I'm sitting at the 19, 110, 111, then I'm probably willing to package 2 of those picks, like the 110 and the 202, to go up to the 108, or even the 109 and the 201 to get up to the 108, just because it's going to have a name value that people that already know before the draft has happened, before we have landing spots. Brock Bowers is someone that that people are interested in, and that's probably the worst that you're going to do. Like the JJ McCarthy is the worst that you're going to do at the 108. So that's pretty much my takeaway from this exercise.
Yeah, and looking at this board, I would say, arguably 109 through 208 is one giant tier. You're going to have some people, now maybe if he goes to Philly, this would not be the case, but you are going to have some people that want to take Xavier Worthy as a top 10, top 11 pick. You are going to have people that want to take Lad McConkey at the end of the first round. You are going to have people that let Troy Franklin and Keon Coleman slip to the mid or even late second rounds, right? It's weird. You got to stay fluid, but the one thing is for sure, those top 8, assuming that the 8th pick is kind of weird though, right? Because if JJ McCarthy goes first round, but it's not to Minnesota, are we going to take Brock Bowers over him, right? Like if JJ McCarthy goes to, let's call it Denver, right? How does that change things? Because Denver is only 1 pick behind Minnesota. Minnesota is obviously still in contract talks with Kirk Cousins, so it's weird. It's really weird. I would say pick 1 through 7 is definitive good value. Pick 108. I think we kind of alluded to this in a previous video. It's the sneaky value because it's not guaranteed, but it's a good chance to be, good. I don't know, just a lot of moving pieces at this stage in the offseason. But I'm on board with you, man. If I can trade a late first and an early to mid second for one of those top 6, top 7 picks, I'm going to do it every single time. Brian Thomas, I will say, if he goes into a better situation, he can become the consolation prize at 108 if JJ McCarthy doesn't go to Minnesota, right? Because I do think Brian Thomas is, in my opinion, in a tier of his own for that wide receiver spot of this class. It's just that he landed in a kind of crummy situation in this mock draft with Green Bay, but it is what it is. But before we close up the video here, Tyler, any closing remarks, buddy?
No, I just gave them to you before about the teardrop. But like, comment, subscribe. Tell me why I'm a better drafter than Mikey.
Yeah, always. That's your go-to, right? But yes, thank you everyone for watching. Like Tyler said, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know, who would be your pick at 301, right? Because there's a lot of names still here on the board. Knowing the landing spots, who would be the guy that is the can't miss? Man, I can't believe you let him fall to the 3rd round. Let me take him here. So let us know that in the comments. But for myself, for Tyler, and for Goal Line Dynasty, we will see you guys next time.